Howdy y'all, JoeHills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee, and in today's very special episode, I'll make the case for why Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful financial firms in America, has misstepped by paying former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton over $200,000 to speak for them. My logic is simple. I'd be willing to speak at Goldman Sachs for half as much. Now, I might not be able to get up in front of those folks and talk about the content of classified emails or precisely what's happening in Libya, but in fairness, Secretary Clinton wouldn't either. And so, for your benefit, I humbly present a brief sample of the talk I would give at Goldman Sachs. Howdy, Goldman Sachs. JoeHills here, and I'd like to thank Michael Carr for getting the crowd warmed up for me. I had no idea y'all's co-head of merger and acquisitions was such a laugh. I'll be looking forward to his upcoming comedy special on HBO, Netflix, Hulu, a Sears company. But let's get down to business. I'm from a part of America y'all would probably refer to in polite company as one of the outer boroughs, but what everyone at home calls Tennessee. And let me tell you, living and working in Tennessee has given me some perspective I might not have if I were a fresh young MBA working in lower Manhattan. For example, in my first job after college, my supervisor was an actual communist who had the distinction of being the only citizen of the Dakotas to register as a communist toward the end of the Cold War, and enjoyed being followed daily by the only FBI agent in the Dakotas whose job it was to keep an eye on communist activity. Now this fella, he reported to my department head, a professor of Russian history whose management philosophy boiled down to two key points. 1. Bureaucracies fail. 2. We should be proud of our success, but we cannot allow it to dominate our worldview, because the only question the rest of the world has for us is, yeah, what'll you do for me tomorrow? I look around, and I can see that you're smart enough folks that you don't bother paying people to tell you what you already know. So don't worry, I've got some mean things to say in a bit, and this upcoming nice part merely serves to frame my argument. I want to take a second to acknowledge that the partners of your firm have done some great things. Your senior leaders served this country in World War II and established themselves in ways that later profited this company greatly come peacetime. For example, Sidney Weinberg's contributions to the logistical efforts being undertaken at a scale no one had ever seen earned him the respect of many influential people. How did he maintain that respect as other men were being condemned as war profiteers? Let's look at the timeline for a second. World War II was a really popular war, and pitching in to fight a madman rolling tanks across Europe and northern Africa was a great opportunity for all sorts of folks to turn a quick buck under the cover of patriotism. But now a decade later, Korea was not as popular a war, didn't have the public behind it. But Sidney Weinberg still left Goldman Sachs for a time and showed up to help run the Office of Defense Mobilization because public service was important to him. Now, if a company was considering adding Sidney Weinberg to their board, and the question arose, what will he do for us tomorrow? I suspect the answer would probably be, what he's always done for everybody, but for us. So let's talk about conflicts of interest. Y'all want to work in the best interests of every client, every time, all the time. That sounds really, really difficult, but I think that we should maybe not dwell on that and instead focus on opportunities where things just line up. For example, I don't need a slide rule or an abacus to determine how many of Goldman Sachs' clients benefited from the Allied victory in World War II. All of them. I'm sure many of y'all own very expensive watches, and they'll inform you with unmatched chronometric precision that it is not in fact World War II anymore. Even so, I encourage you to seek opportunities to help as many clients as you can in ways that might be considered above and beyond your day-to-day duties or obligations. This new headquarters, I like it. It's pretty nice. I'm glad you invited me here. It's a $2 billion investment in Lower Manhattan. Now, that's a lot of money to folks like me with student loans to cover and toddlers to daycare, But your clients, to them, this might not seem excessive. This is probably about right. They probably also have similar investments in Lower Manhattan. They buy or lease property here. Now, you guys watch the news. You've heard about these rising oceans and storm surges. Ask yourselves, how can you help all of your clients in Lower Manhattan at once? How can you help them avoid finding themselves in Deeper Manhattan? Okay, you're looking at each other, you're looking at me, you're skeptical. Yeah, there's not much any single one of you can do to keep the sea level where it's at. But if you work together and you look past conflicts of interest between your clients and toward confluences of interest among your clients, you can find a huge number of people who will want to develop a massive seawall. And you will find yourselves in a position with the power to finance and profit from that construction. There's a certain harmony at play here. And if you really listen, you'll hear that harmony ends in money. I know some of you are itching to point out that harmony also starts with harm. And don't worry, everyone is really impressed that you're still paying attention. But okay, so yeah, your firm's leadership has done some great things. Gus Levy, amazing charity fundraiser. Yeah, your firm has done some great things. You refuse to participate in hostile takeovers. You fight corporate raiders. Okay, good. I'm sure each of you has done what you can in your own communities to help them. But you know what? It is never enough. That work never ends. And not because you're special. Not because you need to atone for some corporate sins of the past, or because you want to feel better about being wealthier than the Earl of Grantham, but because sharing in the human experience requires sharing in the difficulties of your neighbors and countrymen. Overcoming those difficulties requires a commitment to cooperation and problem solving that each and every one of you obviously demonstrates daily. Otherwise, you'd already be fired. So ask yourselves, what will Goldman Sachs do for the world tomorrow? Well, that's about all I'm willing to give away for free right now. If you'd like to hire me as a speaker at Goldman Sachs, I'd be happy to explore my thoughts about failure and explain to your employees why all the good Goldman Sachs does lulls them into a false sense of virtue that undermines their ability to appropriately assess risks. As I said, I'm a bargain compared to Secretary Clinton, and it never hurts to support the arts. So until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring.